Today, we're looking at in this video, we're taking a look at Rohrer and Klingner's Magenta ink Alt Bordeaux. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. And if you like magenta inks, there's a link to that playlist down in the description. For those of you that don't know, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. And for those that do, welcome back. Let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does show some shading, especially when you look at Bordeaux, where it starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker, gets lighter again, and gets darker, so it's pretty nice here. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade very nicely where brown goes darker to lighter, over goes light to dark. 16 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, decent shading as over goes light to dark, brown goes darker to lighter. The K in quick is very dark compared to everything around it. 23 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both left to right do show some good color variation, and we do get it. And the smear test, you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then an Airmail Regal was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade rather nicely. Look at Alt goes lighter to darker. Bordeaux goes dark to light to dark to light to dark. Pretty nice. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading as brown goes darker to lighter, over goes lighter to darker, and 24 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade rather nicely. Over goes light to dark. Fox goes light to dark. The K in quick, very dark compared to all of the stuff around it. 35 seconds to dry. Now the scrubbies don't show much color variation. It's much better in the writing. And the smear test, you could not recover it if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. There's a line of ink put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see on the bottom of this first one is a very light purple in this line area, and it's pushing up. It's very, very light, and it's going into this magenta. But across the top is a brighter yellow, but not like a highlighter yellow. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's dunked into water. And you see that that purple on the bottom is really forming a line there, bonding with the paper, looking like it might want to be some kind of resistant. None of that purple is pushing its way up. All we see is that very light magenta. Then we get the yellow across the top again. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. Again, you see it in the Alt, dark to lighter to darker. You see it in Bordeaux, dark to light to dark to light to dark. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It shades nicely. Quick goes dark to light to dark. Jumps goes light to dark. 18 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It shades very nicely. Fox goes darker to light to dark. Dog goes light to dark. Lazy light to dark. Over light to dark. 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation, and it is there. It is very nice. The smear test says you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. This smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation. That complete blowout and loss of the lowercase h would make me say no, being very risk-averse. Water is really reactivating and lifting a lot of this ink off the page, but you don't see really fully the white of the paper coming through. Pen flush does nothing more than water did, and the 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it, though discoloring the paper. It only took water to get this out of my pen. The next writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia. This particular writing sample is not done so much to see performance change, but to see tone changes that occur. And the interesting thing to me is it appears to be a little bit darker of a tone, and the shading actually, I think, shows up a little bit nicer on the yellow paper. This darker tone does make it look like it's leaning a bit more red, which means if you work in an office environment with yellow paper, then this might be something to consider if you use red ink, because it very much looks more like a red than a magenta. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Rohrer and Klingner's Alt Bordeaux has a viscosity of 1.49, making this a very wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity is tested and all of that stuff, there's a link to that video down in the description. The next writing sample will be done on black and red notebook paper. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather spread, halo sheen, decent shading. Bordeaux goes dark to light to dark to light to dark, as it has done regularly. The extra fine is a little lighter than the stub, with no feather spread. Halo sheen, it does shade rather nice. Over starts light and gets dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. 7 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread. Halo sheen, it does shade some. Dog starts light and gets dark. The starts lighter and gets darker. Not too bad. Quick goes from dark. It does get a little bit lighter, not a ton lighter, but then it goes super dark at the K. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, far left to far right. The medium not nearly as much, but it's not bad in the writing. And the smear test, you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Rohrer and Klingner's Alt Bordeaux has an average dry time of 24 seconds, so it's a bit longer than normal. The last writing sample is done on white lines paper. Now, this paper is not made for fountain pens, so there are some spots where it's bleeding heavier into the page, but not through the page, not touching the page underneath. I do think you could use the back of this paper, and the dotting that would occur like this is not so distracting that it would destroy your notes on both sides. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shading, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, a little lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. There are spots of shading, like quick goes dark to light to dark, and dog goes light to dark. 5 seconds to dry. Now, the scrubby for both do show a tiny bit of color variation, and we really only saw a little bit in the medium. The smear test, you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Rohrer and Klingner's Alt Bordeaux, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a black to not draw any attention away from this ink, and I chose Montegrappa's Black. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then there are playlists down in the descriptions, and you can check that out. So what do I think of Rohrer and Klingner's Alt Bordeaux? I'm really enjoying this tone. The ink shades really well, which we know I like. I like magenta more than red because it rarely seems obnoxious on the page like red can, for me. I prefer to use magenta as an alternative to red. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I'm not a fan of the super dark solid tone that's put down from a very wet pen here. I would prefer it from a medium to dry, medium or fine nib pen. I think the color that goes down is much more enjoyable, and it offers the shading that this ink can do. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to look at Pen BBS 175.